What's up everyone, Soldier First Class here. In today's mission, we'll be discussing some new concept art that may have given us our first look at Final Fantasy XVI, so stay tuned soldiers, it's time for our next mission. Before we get started, big shout out to Miraculous Maku on Twitter for bringing this concept art to my attention. Maku is an excellent source of information when it comes to Japanese media and deserves a lot of credit for breaking information on Twitter. Check them out by following the link in the description below. With Final Fantasy VII Remake development being in full swing, fans have wondered when we'll be seeing Final Fantasy XVI. While we don't have anything concrete, we do know that the game will be on next-generation consoles. Square Enix has been hiring for next-generation projects, and now we've gotten a possible first look at Final Fantasy XVI. Recently, Square Enix decided to consolidate their business divisions from 11 down to 4. Naoki Yoshida, director of Final Fantasy XIV, was made the head of the newly created Business Division 3. His complete turnaround from the mess that was Final Fantasy XIV has led him to be considered one of the best directors in the company. Final Fantasy XIV has reached over 16 million players worldwide, and that number continues to grow with each expansion of the game. This has caused several fans to want Yoshida to direct the next Final Fantasy game. Yoshida has actually wanted to develop the next Final Fantasy game for a while, and has even said he doesn't want it to be an MMO. During a Paris fan festival, Yoshida was asked a few questions, but was also asked about what Final Fantasy XVI and XVII should bring to the series. He replied, "First, if you're asking whether the Final Fantasy series will get another MMO soon, I think the chances are unlikely as long as Final Fantasy XIV is doing well. On that note, personally speaking, I'd like to see a Final Fantasy that is straightforward fantasy, one that doesn't have much machinery, and one with no mecha in it." With that being said, Yoshida has been greenlit on a next generation project which may in fact fit that description. New concept art has been revealed on the Square Enix website, telling us of a new game in progress. It then goes on to say, a new core project following Final Fantasy XIV was launched, and the challenge for the next generation has begun. The project has already completed the initial development, has completed the development environment, and is now moving into full-scale, large-scale development phase. Both are looking for developers to give the world an interesting, fun, and surprise. Now, if I was a betting man, I'd bet that Final Fantasy XVI is officially under development and Yoshi P is our new director. If he can save the original Final Fantasy XIV from the travesty that game was, I have no doubt a brand new Final Fantasy game is in good hands. So let's take a look at the concept art itself and see what we can find. At first glance, it has a very Final Fantasy XIV look to it. It looks like it draws heavy inspiration from the Heavensward expansion, and it's possible Yoshida will be using this as his base for the design. It also reminds me a little bit of King's Landing from Game of Thrones. We see a castle town with the castle on the high cliff in the background. It looks like a village you'd see in a King Arthur story. It's very colorful, birds are flying around, and we can see ships coming into the harbor. It looks like a large capital city of some sorts and could be the center of commerce for this kingdom. Then we look in the bottom left corner and we may be getting our first look at our new hero. Since we don't know if this character will be male or female, I'll refer to them as they. They're overlooking the city from a cliff in the bottom left, possibly looking at the castle as their target. What's really interesting is the dragon-like creature flying right in front of the figure. It doesn't appear that the creature is hostile as the hero doesn't have his blade drawn. The blade's hilt is fastened and the hero looks as if the dragon-like creature is an ally, summon, or possibly a messenger. With the dragon-like creature, this actually reminds me a little bit of the opening from Final Fantasy V. I also noticed the dark segment on the right hand side telling us there's a great evil hanging over the city. It definitely feels like some foreshadowing as they could have easily just made the whole piece reflect the brightness of the town and castle. Needless to say, looking at this concept art, there's no machines or mecha to be found and the setting is definitely very fantasy oriented. It appears we may be seeing a game closer to the original where the Warriors of Light were in a time of knights, castles, and damsels in distress. In fact, Yoshida has stated before that his favorite fantasy settings include these elements. In a Time article about Yoshida saving Final Fantasy XIV, they asked, "What's your favorite fantasy story and why is it your favorite?" Yoshi P replied, "Considering recent works, I'm into Game of Thrones, but what holds a special place in my heart are The Legend of King Arthur and The Lord of the Rings. I think anyone around my generation will think so too." Then there's Star Wars, Dragon Quest 1 through 3, and Final Fantasy 1, which impacted me in terms of storytelling and world creation. As for why, all of these titles have a strong foundation in their settings and a sense of reality in a fictional world. Not only are they very entertaining, but they leave room for the imagination of the people who enjoy these titles to run wild. So when we look at Final Fantasy XIV, we see a lot of this in its design. It makes a lot of sense that Yoshida was inspired by these things, and is the reason why he wants to make the next Final Fantasy game this way. Overall, I'd be absolutely excited if Yoshi P was heading the development of Final Fantasy XVI. He's a very intelligent and capable director, and knows how to create life in a fantasy setting. I've actually wanted another fantasy setting since Final Fantasy IX, and hopefully this concept art is a sign that it's coming. Hopefully Yoshida is given the same freedom he was given with 14, and his masterful direction will give us one of the best Final Fantasy titles in years. So what do you think, soldiers? Should Yoshida be directing Final Fantasy XVI? Thanks for watching, and don't forget to omni-slash that like button. Let me know in the comments section below if you think this new project is Final Fantasy XVI. Subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell to join the ranks of Soldier today. And for all the latest Final Fantasy and Square Enix news, rumors, and trailers, I'm Soldier First Class, and I'm on to the next mission. Later, guys.